No one likes to spend their time in a courtroom for any reason, especially if it has something to do with the way you are performing at work. Most jobs, you don't really have to think about the legal hazard that you might have or might be associating yourself with, but that is not the case with all careers. There is a high risk of being pulled into a legal suit when working in a career where your professional advice and actions are taken into consideration. Individuals working in professional industries, such as lawyers, doctors, real estate agents, and insurance agents, must always be concerned and aware of the legal risk that can exist for them. They are advising people or making some sort of action that has a large impact in their customers' lives. You're all here to hear specifically of what risks pertain to you as insurance agents. Everyone makes mistakes, and insurance agents aren't an exception. The insurance industry is greatly complex and evolves constantly. Consequently, this generates opportunity for mistakes to occur. In insurance, these types of mistakes would fall under errors in omission. For those of you who don't know, errors in omission insurance is a type of professional liability insurance that protects companies and their employees against claims made by their clients or customers for negligent or inadequate work and/or actions. Think of it kind of like malpractice. For insurance agents like yourself, this is where the biggest risk lies for you as an individual, but also the agency that you do business for. The number of these types of claims for insurance agents has increased and is increasing rapidly over time, following closely behind to the frequency for doctors and lawyers, which I assume you all can guess the number for claims against doctors and lawyers is very high. Statistically, it has been shown that about 1 in 7 insurance professionals will be named in some type of errors in omission issue at some point in their career. There are about, let's say, 70 people in this room. That means that 10 of you here will be involved in an E&O claim in your career, if you have not done so already. It is hard to say the average cost for a typical claim, as they vary drastically based on industry appetite and the size of the company. But Stephanie K. Jones says that the average settlement is $60,000. And for most, the deductible on their E&O coverage may be higher than the average settlement amount. Also, just to make it clear, if any of you are wondering, just because an agency has been sued does not mean that they did anything wrong, or the agent in particular. In most cases, the claims are closed for no loss payment, which means the agency did not pay anything resulting from the claim. To be exact, about 60 to 70% of E&O claims are closed for no loss payment. Even though most of the time there may not be a cost owed at the end of a claim settlement, there will always be a cost for defense. Understandably, the higher the number of claims, the higher the dollar amount will be for the claims at the end of the year. Most of the claims you experience will be no loss payment, but for some of you, you will have to experience claims that might result in payments made due to damages caused by a mistake that was made by you. These types of claims can be a nuisance, as they can be very costly and time-consuming. My first supervisor, when I began my career, had an experience with a claim that falls under this description. I'm going to share his story so you can get an idea of the impact these claims can have on your personal life and your finances. Due to my supervisor's failure to document a phone conversation that was had, the agency and himself were sued for $3 million in damages. After 2 years of constant long court dates and investigations, the claim settled at $2 million, with our agency covering 50% of the charges, along with defense costs, and of course, the consequence of having to lose a large client. My supervisor was responsible for half of the E&O deductible, which was $10,000, while the agency covered the other half. Meaning by the end of the 2 years, he had spent more than 15 full days in courthouses, having to go through all phone conversations, email, and all other sort of contact that he had with the client, and having to pay $5,000 out of pocket in costs. This is just an example of how time-consuming and costly these types of mistakes and claims can be to your agency and yourself personally as an insurance professional. I want to emphasize again that we are all human, and it is bound that you make a mistake here and there from time to time. Therefore, it is important you know the most common types of claims and how to avoid them. According to Insuron, the 6 most common types of claims are the following: failure to procure coverage, failure to adequately explain policy provisions, failure to adequately identify exposures, failure to recommend a coverage, inaccurate or incomplete information, and failure to provide timely notice of a claim to a carrier. Failing to get appropriate coverage for a client is one of the most common claims, accounting for about 24% of all E&O suits. But it also results in a loss of revenue for the agency, as coverage and premium could have been placed but was not for whatever reason. Miscommunication is most likely the root cause for failing to adequately explain policy provisions. It has a lot to do with the complexity of insurance and the difficulty for clients to understand it. About 6% of all lawsuits against agents come from poor risk analysis, which can indicate issues in education and/or training for agents. Failing to recommend a coverage falls just over 5% of E&O claims, as clients turn to you for your expertise, and if their needs are not met, it's no wonder why they get frustrated and will always point the finger back at you. Even if it's not your fault and the client just forgot to give you information, this will not always prevent them from suing. Inaccurate or incomplete information is about 5% of E&O claims. The higher the number of people working with one client, the higher the chance that the wrong information will be given and mistakes will be made. Lastly, failing to provide timely notice of a claim falls at about 4% of all suits. Just comes from insurance transactions being time sensitive and agents feeling crunched for time. There are, of course, many other types of claims, but they can almost all be grouped into the 6 most common types I just mentioned, as they typically always revolve around miscommunication, misrepresentation, or failure to document properly. Ideally, you'd take precautions regarding all these types of claims, and that means knowing and understanding what you can do to prevent these claims from occurring. If you are ever placed in a situation where legal suit is being filed against you, you must make sure that you have the proper information and documentation to support your case. Proper documentation, consistent policies and procedures, and coverage knowledge are an agent's best defense when speaking of E&O. Coverage knowledge is one area where agencies can always strengthen themselves and their employees, says Chris Brand, founder and owner of Brand & Associates LLC in Pueblo, Colorado, which provides agency management consulting services, including agency E&O exposures. Technology is a resource that can make it easier to track things when utilizing an agency management system, but it can also be a double-edged sword. Having a place to store documentation can prove you are completing your tasks, but it can also display something that is not being fulfilled that was promised. Since technology can hurt or aid you, you must ensure that you use it properly and efficiently. This can be directly tied into policies and procedures. I know these will differ from agency to agency, but it is important that you follow all policies, and it can include basic things such as storing all signed applications and written requests for any policy changes. It is also very important that you have quick response time to request. This means answering all emails and calls within an appropriate turnaround time. All these items can be addressed at the time of a claim, and this is why it is crucial you are detail-oriented and organized with everything you do regarding client information. Statistically, most of you here will be placed in a situation where legal suit is being filed against you. And unfortunately, since there is no way to 100% effectively prevent a suit from being filed, making sure your daily work is organized and documented can aid in settling a claim quicker and not as costly.